just because you can doesn't mean you should. That a business need not torment its own customer base if a check is not found within a certain amount of time. It means that the product's excellence should be of concern and care of the people who run that business. And I've always wanted to just buy some stock in some company and say, you don't know what you're doing. This thing fell apart on me on the third day. And hold people accountable. You don't have to have a separate class, although you do have to, in my mind, teach history in context. Because you'll never understand the miraculous revolution that we represented unless you learn in context and in linear time what preceded it. Because what preceded it was a crime. In the old order, the 800 years of the feudal system in Europe, 6 people were accused of capital crimes from the aristocratic class. And I'm including all the countries of Europe. The aristocratic class was accused of capital crimes 6 times. That's it. There was no legal code. There was no law that applied to all, and there was no one, and there was only those who were above the law. And we said, no one is above the law, and everyone has a right to due process of law. Due process is not our invention, but no one applied it until we did. And when we stopped teaching it, we stopped knowing it, it somehow changed to selective due process, which is about as illogical as you can get. You can say that there is a due process of law, except for those people. No. If you can look back, as we have, and say this was the golden age of America. During that golden age of America, black people were hanged at the rate of 90 a month by anyone who chose to hang a black man, woman, or child. And that was 3 times defeated in Washington, as if we needed an anti-lynching bill. It was defeated 3 times because that was the acceptable cost of doing business in the federal government. And then after a 5-year television exposure of that, everyone went, oh my God, how could we have accepted that? That's crazy. It was crazy. And it was acceptable because we were hypnotized. But it certainly wasn't a golden age. And we have the right to look back and see what was really there. And what we are doing right now is not seeing something right in front of our face, that we are making our children, to be polite about it, less intelligent. Or to be more impolite about it, stupid. And there's no gain in making our progeny stupid. We don't gain anything from it. Some businesses may think that having an unquestioning workforce is better in the short term, but that's only the short term. In the long run, you want a smart military, you want a smart business, you want smart industry, you want smart farmers, you want smart kids. If you don't, you're not very American. And so, I would say that civics, which is so boring a word, because we've made it boring, can be taught and should be taught in every subject, whether it's teaching geography on the Mercator map or geology, you can learn ethics and values. And if you learn anything about the history of business, from Adam Smith on, Adam Smith published The Wealth of Nations in 1776. A year that resonates. And he explained how a woman's desire for a fur hat in London was connected to the behavior of fur trappers in Montreal and button keepers in Marseille. And he chose and he designed or illustrated capitalism. Capitalism and democracy are potentially perfect partners because of the freedom that is allowed and the boundaries that are established. But if care is not taken, one can take advantage of the other quicker and faster. If you want to protect capitalism in this country, you make your kids smarter, your democracy stronger, and you hold people accountable. When capitalists are sent to prison for breaking the law, that's not a bad thing. And when students say, why aren't we talking about the foreclosures of homes? They're the headline in the LA Times and the New York Times. They have a right to ask that, and they have a right to demand that it be discussed. How else can we understand it? So, if I was running it, I would say that in history, you learn how it was, the change we wrought, the gift we gave. And then in every other class, you can learn right behavior and wrong behavior. In business, in anything. And you can always back yourself up with opposing views and debate. The thing you never hear from Homo sapien is, I don't know, or I changed my mind. And we know that the ability to say, I don't know, is an act of maturity, not immaturity. And yet, as my son says, I would rather gnaw my arm out of a trap than say, I don't know, or I changed my mind. Well, I applaud teachers who raise up in their kids the willingness to say, I don't know, but I'll find out.
Another component to this is two things. One, the teachers that we've all had, that we can look back on, are the ones who kindled in us a love of learning and an eternal curiosity. And I think the key thing in any class, whether it's a college class or a third grade class, is not a resuscitation of the what and when, but the why. Why is Shepherdstown here versus somewhere else? Why is Route 480 here and not somewhere else? I mean, you could literally walk out of this building and walk 2 blocks and have a month's worth of questions dealing with why. Why is there a town run? And how do we move past the dry learning and regurgitation of the what and the when and just keep asking why? Why does a farm of 200 years ago look different than one today? We can go and look at a barn in this county and see a 200-year-old barn. Why is it different than a barn that was just built last month? So the why. The other part is the human brain, and there's been lots of research in the last few years, like the rest of our body, grows and shapes itself from birth until early 20s. So there are certain things that you should introduce at the age-appropriate level. You don't have to discuss the complexity of the Constitution in third grade, but you can introduce concepts of debate in third grade. And may not be debating Afghanistan or what we should do in Libya. It may be literally as simple as having the kids in the class, who in this class has a cat, and you raise their hand. Who in the class has a dog, they raise their hand, and they debate the whether a dog or a cat is a better pet. But then at the end you say the underlying value is we all love animals and are better and richer because they're part of our lives. And that's where you start to show that you can disagree, but you find a common base underneath that. We can disagree on abortion in Afghanistan and run through the alphabet from there, but the underlying love of country keeps us together. And so we look at what ultimately bonds us and creates a common frame of reference and common civility, and then we can be passionate about what we are passionate about, but we can still agree to disagree because we have that underlying component. And something as simple as I have a cat, you have a dog, in a third grade, fourth grade, or even kindergarten class starts to introduce the concepts of debate and civility. And so those are the kinds of things that as a teacher you can bring to the classroom without buying an expensive computer simulation.
And I have a little nugget for you, and it's something that I love. When I studied evolution, it was one thing. When I read on my own, for pure pleasure, the theory of evolution, it became as magnificent as Shakespeare. And one of the things that you can experience is that when you learn anything, whether it's 2 + 2, or how to kiss a girl, or a sonnet, when you learn something you didn't know, if you're paying attention, you can feel a reward go right up the back of your neck. You can feel an immediate response. And that's evolution saying, yeah, come on, more. That's something I will dare you to do, because it's there. Pay attention, learn something, and just feel that sense of whatever you call it, sensual pleasure, satisfaction, completion, closure. I don't care what you call it. It is our gift that encourages us to learn. And behind all of public education's bureaucracies and rules and regulations and testing and all of that is always the possibility of learning the splendid pleasure of learning for its own sake, of enlarging your head and learning something new. There's nothing more exciting, nothing more satisfying than learning something, not because you're told to, not because you got to pass a test, but because you like that sensation. I can see in 25, 30 years, kids running to school because they know that's where the fun is. And when you use iPads and cell phones and search engines and the Microsoft table and Thinkfinity from Verizon and all of these high-tech things that make learning so much fun. First time I saw the Microsoft table, I had to be dragged away from it. When you find that, you find a part of yourself that is bigger than yourself. You find a connection to the whole world. You know what people mean when they say that reading is like time travel. When you learn anything, you know you're on the side of Homo sapien.
One last question.
I didn't hear you say anything about religion as in part of this, because I hear that about 85% of Americans are religious in some kind of way, and ethics and character is a strong part of that. Wouldn't you think that that would go in there somehow in your?
It's at the basis of what is great about this system. John Adams said that our system is stronger because of the variety of religions that it protects. By protecting all, and not one, not just one, there is an immense feeling of safety and security. And also, what people don't usually admit is that politics itself is the secular arm of faith. It asks the same question: how can men and women live together in some semblance of decency and freedom and opportunity and creativity? And it answers in the same way: do unto others as you would have others do unto you. That's as political an answer as it is a spiritual one. Learning is a spiritual experience. And that can only be explained when you dive into it. But whether God is metaphor or fact, it works. God works because there is this invisible, secret pleasure. And I've always thought it silly to ask third graders to answer the cosmic questions of life and death. We're not old enough as a race to know the answers. But it's the questions of those kind that make us separate and better and higher. It's asking those questions that make us mature. Answering them makes us immature. So, if people are people of faith, our system protects their liberty more than any other, unless we choose not to do it.
And I was thinking that ethics and civility is right at the center of all that. And that is a great tool of strengthening the ethics and the civility in this country.
Listen, if people listen to the Sermon on the Mount, you would hear a radical political doctrine. And if you listen to any Western religion, it is about behavior, good behavior. I'm Jewish. In the Jewish religion, there are 613 laws, not about life after death, but about how we live with one another and do well as fathers, as parents, as business partners. That's what the whole religion is based on. Ethics.
Let's say thank you to both Scott and Mr. Dreyfuss is going to stay around for a little while if you want to come up and say hi. And if you have to leave, we sure appreciate your time staying here, but he said he'll stay around for a little while and you can have a little chat with him. Thank you.